is Justin Martyr speaking with Trypho the Jew, talking about the millennium. Trypho wondered if Justin and the other Christians truly believed in the kingdom. And I have to quote it from this source from Bishop Brooks because it's a passage that has been tampered with in some manuscripts. So I want to read the true account here, okay? And Justin says to Trypho, I am not such a wretch, Trypho, as to say one thing and mean another. I have before confessed to thee that I and many others are of this opinion, that Jerusalem shall be rebuilt and the saints enjoy a happy life on earth with Christ, so that we hold it to be thoroughly proved that it will come to pass. But I have also signified unto thee, on the other hand, that many, even those of that race of Christians who follow not godly and pure doctrine, do not acknowledge it. For I have demonstrated to thee that these are indeed called Christians, but are atheists and impious heretics, because that in all things they teach what is blasphemous and ungodly and unsound, and etc. If therefore you fall in with certain who are called Christians, who confess not this truth, the kingdom, but dare to blaspheme the God of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, in that they say there is no resurrection of the dead, but that immediately they die, their souls are received up into heaven. Avoid them, and esteem them not Christians. But I and whatsoever Christians are orthodox in all things, do know that there will be a resurrection of the flesh, and 1,000 years in the city of Jerusalem, built, adorned, and enlarged, according as Ezekiel, Isaiah, and other prophets have promised. He mentions here that a not is omitted. This line here has been tampered with in some manuscripts, as if to have Justin say there were Orthodox Christians who were non-premillennial in his day, but there were not. There were not. The Christianizing of the Gnostic eschatology didn't occur until Origen, and it was popularized through Eusebius and others. Anyone familiar with church history knows this, okay? And what this shows you really is that in Justin's day, he's speaking with Trypho, a Jew, and Trypho was needing affirmation from Justin here that he and others actually believed in the Jewish kingdom. So that's interesting. The original Christian movement was a Jewish sect. It's called that in the book of Acts. It was a Jewish movement. It did not have Gnostic philosophical tendencies strung through its thought and so forth. And that's what Trypho was familiar with. And so he was thinking Christians didn't believe in the kingdom. See? And so that's part of the reason this discussion is put down in writing by Justin. It shows a problem with Gnostics. Now, Gavin Ortland is a millennialist. This view comes from Origen, who, what did Origen do? He Christianized further, I guess. I'm not quite sure how to put it. Origen took the Gnostic eschatology, which is an already existing kingdom, things like this. I can prove that. If you want the proof of that, look in Tertullian on the resurrection of the flesh, chapter 22. I have that ready to read here if I need to. Maybe I'll pull it up and read it. But you can get an idea of the Gnostic eschatology, and it was all about getting rid of the physical, and this includes bodily resurrection. This is why Justin unites this denial of the covenants, the Abrahamic and Davidic covenants, the kingdom. This denial goes hand in hand with a denial of the resurrection. And these Gnostics would emphasize this departure of the spirit at death to heaven as the goal. Does that sound like Christian churches today? Yes. Yes, it does. Sounds like every church I ever walked into in America. Now, Justin believed in the soul. He believed men had a soul. Okay, don't misread this. He's not a conditional immortality proponent. If you read his hortatory address to the Greeks, you'll find that out real quick. He says that death, if it were issued in insensibility, like some Jews believe, they didn't think man had a spirit like some people. Some Jews believe that. Well, Justin said, no, we believe in the soul. It's in a section where he's defending the Christian belief in the soul. And he says, and death, if it were issued in insensibility, would be a godsend to the wicked. So that's really Justin's view on that right there. But this idea that the souls go to heaven, that was not developed yet in church history. Justin, Irenaeus, people like this, they believed Luke 16 to be a true depiction of the afterlife. So does Hippolytus. You can look it up in his writings. I think his fragments, he gets into that. And they thought this was still the way things worked now, though. They thought both the wicked and the righteous go down, and not until resurrection will you ever go to heaven, so to speak. But they focus primarily on the coming kingdom age. So this is all very interesting. The Gnostics, I could go to another section where Irenaeus talks about this, but I probably shouldn't. This video isn't about that. Anyway, look what Justin's doing. He uses his Chiliasm, his premillennialism. Chiliasm is another word for premillennialism, all right? Justin and other early Christians used their premillennialism as a way of identifying Gnostics in their midst, or laity among the brethren who had been influenced by Gnostic teaching. They used their premillennialism to identify these people. You can see it here. You can see it in Irenaeus. You can see it in Tertullian. You can see it in Hippolytus. Four very, very important apologists of the early church. They aren't the very earliest men, but they are the important men before things went truly south, in my opinion. It's before the 3rd century. And so this is a nice quote from Justin, but I have a nicer quote. Gavin says that the early church, how does he put it again? Let me hear this again.
Modern evangelical Christians tend to assume a certain view of these things that is either has zero historical precedent or is kind of largely at variance with church history.
Zero historical precedent. And look, I've never read Left Behind, but he's saying that the early church wouldn't recognize our futurist premillennial view that we hold. He is, of course, totally wrong. They would immediately recognize much of what they saw. That's the truth about that. Gavin's just guessing. He says, oh, the early church wouldn't even recognize this. He's just guessing. That's not based on anything. But here's what's funny. I know what the early church would think of Gavin Ortland's view if they heard it. I can show you positively what they would think of Gavin Ortland's view if they heard it. So, if Gavin were to describe his beliefs to Irenaeus, here's how Irenaeus would respond. Inasmuch, therefore, as the opinions of certain Orthodox persons, this is put in by the editor, this is laity that was attending with Orthodox people in gatherings, okay? I don't think Irenaeus would call them Orthodox, though, but anyway. Inasmuch, therefore, as the opinions of certain Orthodox persons are derived from heretical discourses, they are both ignorant of God's dispensations and of the mystery of the resurrection of the just, and of the earthly kingdom which is the commencement of incorruption, by means of which kingdom those who shall be worthy are accustomed gradually to partake of the divine nature. Right here, you see what Irenaeus would think of Gavin Ortland's view. So again, if Gavin Ortland were to describe his own beliefs to Irenaeus, what would Irenaeus say? He would say, Gavin, your beliefs are derived from heretical discourses. He would say, you are both ignorant of God's dispensations and of the mystery of the resurrection of the just, and of the earthly kingdom, which is the commencement of incorruption, and etc. He would condemn Gavin Ortland for being influenced by Gnostic schools of thought